Welcome back to the Vince Coglianese Show. Joe Biden wants some money for Israel, but he's only going to give it if there's money for Ukraine. Take a listen to this.
You know, the assault on Israel echoes nearly 20 months of war, tragedy, and brutality inflicted on the people of Ukraine, people that were very badly hurt.
Crooked Joe went before the American people and said that if you want to support Israel, then you have to give a blank check for the proxy war also in Ukraine, having to do with Russia and Ukraine, which is another one, by the way, it would have never happened if we were president.
Yeah, of course, Donald Trump reacting to that speech as well. Joining me now is Senator Roger Marshall from the state of Kansas. Senator, good to have you with us, sir.
Yeah, Vince, it's great to be with you. You speak about Kansas, you have to talk about Eisenhower and Reagan just for a second. That Eisenhower and Reagan gave us peace through strength, but Joe Biden has given us war through weakness. And I think that's what we're seeing on the world stage right now, that our enemies perceive Joe Biden as weak, as I call him, a gutless wonder. And the consequences of this is Russia's not afraid to invade Ukraine. Iran, Hamas, Iran and all their puppets are very willing to see exactly how far they can go. Iran doesn't think that we have a red line anymore. So we're in tough times right now.
Yes, they're very clearly taking advantage of his weakness. But what do you make of this move to try and link Israel's aid for Israel to Ukraine? So, for instance, if I look at the package that Biden put out this past week, the White House put out, they're asking for $100 billion. 61% of it would go to Ukraine, just 14% to Israel. Why is Joe Biden exploiting Israel's tragedy to smuggle in more money for Ukraine?
Well, that's exactly the question that I have. And even the question I have for some of the Republican leadership is that they're prioritizing Ukraine funding over our own border. But this is what I would say is let's talk about the difference between the situation in Ukraine versus the situation in Israel. Ukraine is a 7-year, maybe it's a 9-year war. We're going to spend $1 trillion over these next 7 years helping Ukraine over a border dispute that's gone on for thousands of years. The war in Israel and Gaza is a war between the Hamas army of terror and the people of Israel. This is a battle for the future of humankind. And that's why we need to separate these. But I think the battle in Israel is absolutely worth the government funding. But I just cannot support the situation in Ukraine right now.
Well, what does it tell you that they have to link these two things together? Clearly, one of them wouldn't be able to pass on their own.
Right. And to think about on the House, the Ukraine funding is dead on arrival. So once again, Joe Biden is missing this opportunity of unity, an opportunity to have probably 99 senators vote yes on Israel funding.
Yeah.
But he's going to spoil the pot by throwing in the Ukraine funding. We know that's dead on arrival on the House, so it's going to delay it. It's going to slow it down. Does this guy not have any common sense at all? And again, I'm going to go back to this border thing. Why are we not paying attention to our own border?
Right.
That's causing us to lose 300 Americans every day from fentanyl poisoning.
So I found it interesting that the $100 billion that Biden is requesting also includes $14 billion for our own southern border. But when you look into the details, it doesn't seem like it's actually for border security. It seems like it's for processing more illegals into the country. What do you make of it?
Vince, you're spot on. That's exactly what it's going to do. It's going to make his asylum process more efficient. I've been to the border 3 times, and the last time I was there, I saw Border Patrol officers having phone calls, texting back and forth with the cartel saying, look, we processed all these people. We're ready for the next batch. Bring them on over. And then they had this app that they can use to help the process. So you're spot on. What this funding is going to do is increase the number of people working on the processing of people that are asking for asylum. We need a policy change.
Yeah,
with a simple movement of policy, we can cut our numbers in half, probably by 80 or 90%. Simple policy changes by upping the ante, what it takes to qualify for asylum. Just go back to remain in Mexico. Let's stop catch and release. Simple policy changes, not more money for people doing the processing.
Sure, yeah, and this is only helping enrich the cartels too. But the reality seems to be that if we just secured the border, we could spend a lot less money. Wasn't that right?
Absolutely. So to me, it's a combination. Like most things in life, there's not just a simple solution. Number one is we need to secure the border. by building some type of a fence or wall. And then number two is the policy changes. And yes, we need more Border Patrol officers. We need more technology as well. But again, on my last trip, the Border Patrol officers were begging for a policy change. Because right now these policies are like a megaphone going out through the airwaves across the world. Think about this. 60,000 people of interest have crossed our border in the last 2 years from the Middle East. These are people from Afghanistan, from Syria, those types of countries. 60,000 plus another 20,000 Chinese nationalists. It's the number one most immediate national security threat facing our nation.
Yeah, I want to get back to that with you in just a moment, because I know you're on the Homeland Security Committee too, and that this is such an important issue. But before I get there, you mentioned that Republican leadership is also working with Biden to get this $100 billion package shoved through the Congress. Here's Mitch McConnell on Face the Nation this weekend. Here's what he had to say.
There's resistance among some Republicans, including here in the Senate, about bundling things together. Is it possible to pass Ukraine aid if it's not tied to Israel?
I just think that's a mistake. I mean, I know there are some Republicans in the Senate and maybe more in the House that think Ukraine is somehow different. I view it as all interconnected.
He views it as all interconnected. So here you have the Republican leader in the Senate on the same exact page as Joe Biden here for something that all of this deserves an individual vote, Senator.
Well, what I like about Leader McConnell is he allows us each to have our own voice and to be able to respectfully disagree. And I respectfully disagree with the leader on this particular issue. And I've spoken publicly, I've spoken in private with our senators about this, and I stated my case for it.
Right.
I think where he's missing is our base does not think this is the same issue. My base loves Israel. From the time we started going to Sunday school, we were taught in Sunday school and by our parents to support Israel. As opposed to the situation in Ukraine, every day I find out something new about the corruption going on there with our money. They won't give us an inspector general. By the way, thousands of people are dying in Ukraine as well.
Yes.
No one's talking about peace. Why are we spending time talking about what's the peace solution there? Because this is going to be a war of attrition, and even right now, Ukraine is struggling to find people to go die in battle. So why isn't that important to leadership? Let's talk about ending the war in Ukraine. Let's talk about funding Israel, ending Hamas as we know it, eliminating Hamas from the face of the earth, and securing our border. America has enough money to do the right things here.
All right, let's go back to Homeland Security for a moment. You mentioned, of course, as you and I have been discussing, our border's wide open. Have you seen any intel, or do you have any concern about the threats to the United States? We have a lot of pro-Hamas sentiment, it seems, all across the country, including on America's college campuses and some of our biggest cities. Are you concerned about the threats to our homeland?
Absolutely I am. I do believe our open border is the number one most immediate threat to our national security. I mentioned earlier, 60,000 people of interest have been caught and released in this nation that are from the Middle East, from Iran, from Afghanistan, from Syria, from Turkey, those types of countries. And additionally, a huge spike in Chinese nationalists, 20,000 young, healthy adults, Chinese that have been caught and released into this nation right now. So there's 80,000 people, and our own DHS doesn't know where these people are, who they are. So we're trying to get to the bottom of that as well. 150 some known terrorists that are in the country right now. What's DHS doing with these people? I mean, this army, if you take those people together, is probably bigger than the entire Hamas army of terror that attacked Israel recently. So yes, I'm very concerned about what these people can do. And what I'm really concerned about, though, is their threat to cybersecurity and our intellectual property. That these people are ingrained in our top corporations, our top research places, our in universities, and they're stealing our intellectual property. This is death by 1,000 cuts.
It sounds like you have a deep concern about China as a threat, and that maybe Washington's not actually paying close enough attention to that issue.
Exactly. So you think about China, who they really are. They're the biggest long-term threat.
Yeah.
They steal $500 billion of intellectual property from us every year. 90% of the counterfeits that come in this country are made in China. 90% of the fentanyl that comes in this country is made in China as well. So, China's got my attention as well. And again, they're the ones that will end up attacking our cybersecurity. And no one's talking enough about bioterrorism. I'm more concerned about what new virus that they're developing that could destroy our food supply. So those are just, the tip of the iceberg.
Senator Roger Marshall, we started this conversation talking about Joe Biden's weakness and certainly all of the aggression that we've seen the world's authoritarians take during this period. Over the weekend, it seems like a lot more concern about Americans having to defend themselves now in the Middle East. The Biden administration promising that we will respond when we are attacked. You're an Army veteran, sir. How close do you think we are towards getting into some sort of full-blown war with the United States involved?
Gosh, man, my mom is just worried sick. My son is in the Army. He has orders to go overseas as well as an enlisted. Someone from my family has served every generation since the Civil War has served this country.
Wow.
So I'm always really worried about putting troops in harm's way. Look, I think that there's going to be some type of military response. I don't think it's boots on the ground. I think that our drones and Air Force and Navy, that they'll be able to handle this without boots on the ground. But this is a nuclear powder keg that we're working on right now. Joe Biden has basically enabled Iran to develop nuclear warheads. I think they're just steps away from being able to put their enriched uranium in some type of series and be able to have a nuclear bomb as well. So let's put it this way: it's all on my prayer list, and please, we don't want to lose any American troops in all of this. And again, it's all because of the weakness of Joe Biden. That Joe Biden's weakness is given as war. We have war through Joe Biden's weakness.
Senator Roger Marshall, finally, Iran has been empowered by the Biden administration, it seems, at every turn, whether it's given money or the sanctions are being eased on their ability to export oil. Why is that, in your view? Why is Joe Biden and the people around him so concerned with making life more comfortable for Iran?
Well, Vince, this is something I've contemplated as well. And the only thing I'm coming up with is Joe Biden thinks there's some type of a Nobel Peace Prize if he's able to tame this tiger. But you don't tame a tiger by petting it, right?
Right.
That would be my point as well. But to your point, what he's done to enable Iran, you think about it. He started off. Iran had a ghost fleet of some 20 ships that were delivering oil to China, and now there's over 300 of those ships. Iran is selling $1 billion of oil every week to the Chinese government as well. So Joe Biden certainly has enabled Iran in so many ways.
Yeah, very unfortunately. So, Senator Roger Marshall, really appreciate your time today, sir. Thank you so much.
Vince, thank you. Have a great week.
A new Siena College poll of New York voters conducted just a couple days ago found that Joe Biden is polling at his lowest favorability and job approval numbers yet among these blue state voters. His favorability rating has dropped to 45%. That's down 5 points from where he was in September. And his unfavorability rating has jumped to 52% in this poll. That's up 7 points from the prior month where it was at 45%. So in other words, new low Joe. Joe Biden not performing well. And in fact, he's got abysmal numbers, not just in red states and in swing states, but also in deep blue states like the Empire State. So Joe Biden not doing well there, which probably doesn't come as a tremendous surprise because it seems like with each passing survey, he sets yet another record for disapproval. People are upset about the state of the economy, the state of the border, and certainly in New York, they're beginning to feel that in a big way. Mayor Eric Adams has been talking about this at some length. They're being overwhelmed by crime and illegal immigration. You can thank Joe Biden and all of his fellow Democrats for that. And in New York, they're saying Joe Biden gets very, very poor marks. Now, there is a famous New Yorker this weekend who has quite a bit to say about Joe Biden and his failures. That would be the rapper 50 Cent. That's right. 50 Cent has a lot to say about Joe Biden. He doesn't think he's doing well. In fact, he's angry that he's spending all of his time on the beach and in Delaware and not actually attending to all of the world's problems. Now, I would argue, of course, that he's made all of the world's problems much worse, in fact. But over on social media this weekend, 50 Cent was posting that he thinks Joe Biden needs to get his butt up and actually do something. Hey, Joe Biden, get the bleep up. We in trouble, man, 50 Cent posted this weekend on Instagram. There was a screenshot on the post that said Biden hits the beach with the Middle East and Congress in chaos. And there's a picture of Biden laying out on the beach. In addition, 50 Cent then captured a bunch of the screenshots of some of the articles that noticed his criticism this weekend. And he said, quote, "We got some real S going on out here, Joe. What's the plan to get a tan and chill? Come on now. Come on now." Additionally, he tweeted out another screen grab of one of the pieces covering his musings this weekend. The headline on it, rapper 50 Cent knocks Biden for beach trip amid Israel-Hamas war. We got some real bleep going on. He writes on Twitter, "Okay, we need leadership in crisis, Joe. We don't expect you to have all the answers, but you've got to come up with something." So a bit of panic from the celebrity set, from people like 50 Cent, the gangster rapper, who is saying that Joe Biden is doing a terrible job. And it's hard to blame 50 Cent because, you know, if you were 50 Cent, you'd be grumpy too. Now that you're only worth 38 cents during the Biden administration. Big New York Times headline over the weekend, crossings at the United States southern border are now higher than ever. They report migrants have been caught crossing the southern border of the United States more times in the past year than in any other year since at least 1960, when the government started keeping track of the data. It is the third record-setting year in a row. Joining us now with more detail on this is Mark Krikorian. He's the executive director of the Center for Immigration Studies. Mark, great to have you back with us, sir. Thank you.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, another Friday news dump where we find out, yep, we set another record for illegal entry. What's going on here?
Even worse, it was a Saturday morning news dump. I mean, they're hoping nobody would report on it.
Yeah.
What's going on is what's been going on for 2.5 years now. From inauguration day, this administration undid everything Trump had done to stabilize the border. He hadn't fixed everything, but he'd stabilized it. And, they were told before they took office, during the transition, this is now 3 years ago, they were told, look, fellas, I know what your candidate said during the campaign, but don't do it. It's going to blow up in your face. It's bad for the country, but it's going to be bad for you guys too. They went ahead and did it anyway. And lo and behold, we have the highest level of so-called encounters at the border. That's the PC term now, than ever before. I mean, it's not even close.
Yes, there were more than 2.4 million apprehensions just this fiscal year alone, which ended in September. When we see the word apprehensions, how many of those people end up staying in the United States, Mark?
Unfortunately, under Biden's the vast majority. Now, before May, of that number, before May, a whole bunch of them were in fact bounced back because of that Title 42 that some listeners may remember. That was a COVID era measure, and it allowed the Border Patrol to just bounce you out of the country, no hearing, no asylum, no nothing. That's gone, obviously. And so now we have numbers that are, higher than they've ever been, monthly numbers higher than they've ever been. What did they expect was going to happen? I mean, we've actually tried to estimate, the administration won't tell you, but we've tried to estimate from various sources how many people actually were let go. Because these big numbers include some people who were, caught a couple of times, maybe, that kind of thing. How many people did this administration let into the country? Illegal immigrants with no right to be here, and they were let go. The number at this point is probably close to 3 million people. Illegal immigrants in less than 3 years that this administration had in custody. I don't mean people who snuck by them. Had in custody and then let go into the United States. And supposedly they'll come show up for a hearing, 10 years from now, and nobody believes that. Everybody knows it's BS.
So it doesn't appear that there's any meaningful border whatsoever based on two recent pieces of data that are really jaw-dropping. I know things are bad, but I don't know if I knew they were this bad. The House Judiciary Committee released in October data showing that 99% of all illegals who are here in the United States are not being deported by the Biden administration. 99%. In other words, you are virtually guaranteed to stay in the United States if you're an illegal immigrant. And then we get data this week from the House Homeland Security Committee that the CBP-1 app that foreign nationals are using to indicate to the Biden administration that they want to come into the country, 96% of them are being processed right into the United States of America. Mark, what's happening there?
Yeah, this CBP-1 was something. It was an app, a cell phone app. Made sense when it was set up. It was actually set up by the Trump administration, but it was for legal crossings, like bus companies and truck companies, to sort of schedule ahead of time when they're going to show up at the border, so you don't have lots of people lined up at the border and, frankly, during COVID, breathing all over each other. What the Biden administration did was take this useful, modestly useful management tool. They have turned it into a tool for illegal immigrants, potential illegal immigrants, to schedule their illegal immigration into the United States. It's when you say it that way, it's hard to believe, but that's what it is. Because these people have no right to come in. They schedule this appointment with the CBP-1 app, which you can download yourself. I mean, you're not supposed to use it unless you crossing the border, but it's just at the Apple Store and the Google Play. And they are just letting them in. The 99% number is the number of people who make an appointment who are let in rather than, examined and said, no, you can't come in. You have an appointment, but you fail for whatever reason. They let them all in. They've let hundreds of thousands of people in on this CBP-1 app. And, they say they run their names through criminal database check. And I believe that. They do that. But if they've not been in the United States, then what crimes have they committed here? What good does that do?
Yeah, it's just amazing. 96%, 99%. I can't get these odds in anything. I can't. If I was playing a game of bingo, I'd have no shot. But these guys can come into the United States of America and stay, and it's a virtual guarantee. And yet the Biden administration acts like, well, they keep saying things like the border is secure. And then the latest thing that the New York Times is doing some water carrying for is that they claim, well, this is a global, quote, migration crisis. Every country on planet Earth is dealing with some form of migration crisis. Therefore, the United States is not unique.
Yeah, the administration says this all the time, too. I mean, obviously, it's no surprise the New York Times is carrying their water for them. The administration talks about it as a hemispheric problem that we have to work with our partners in Latin America, blah, blah, blah. It's remarkable that it all happened starting on right after Election Day when Biden was elected. It's really coincidental that all these things happen. The fact is, there are problems in the world. Those problems are endemic. There's poverty, there's corruption, there's disorder and violence. Those are all bad things. And those are, in fact, the things that cause people to think about wanting to leave where they are. The question is, do they follow through and do they go to a particular place? That happens. That decision happens because of the information we send them. And when you tell people, if you come in, schedule your appointment to illegal immigration, especially if you bring a kid with you, we're just going to let you go and nobody's ever going to look for you again.
Yeah.
People are going to take us up on it.
To your point, remember some infamous audio now. Fox News' Griff Jenkins talking to an illegal immigrant after he got into the country. Why'd you come? Why'd you come? And here's what it sounded like.
Everybody believes that the border is open. It's open because we enter, we come in free.
It's open for you to come illegally, right?
Illegally, yes, illegally, that's true. Because we see on the news that everybody coming illegally. So we also do the same.
Yeah, we came in, we do the same. We knew it was open. We come in illegally, and here we are. And here he is. He's in a nice polo shirt. He's got his N95 mask on, and he's telling Griff Jenkins, yeah, of course I came in illegally. That's what everybody's doing.
I mean, what does this administration think? They think these people are stupid. They watch CNN. They get, texts and pictures back from their relatives and friends who made it into the United States. They know more about the immigration enforcement situation than most Americans. So when we send the signal that if you get here, you're going to let go, we're going to let you go.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what kind of ads they take out in Central American radio stations saying, don't come, or the vice president goes down there, do not come. That means nothing when your next door neighbor's son sent back a picture of himself having made it to Chicago and he's got a piece of paper and he's got a job.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Let me talk about another thing that's relevant for our immigration system. It's a matter of who we let in and what their intentions are for our country. Because lately, because of the terror attack in Israel, there's been some discussion among sitting lawmakers about whether or not we should eject foreigners from the United States, these are not U.S. citizens, just foreigners who are here in the country, who express support for terrorism, like from the likes of Hamas. Apparently, it's a matter of some debate. The White House even saying this week that they respect free speech, and they didn't really want to address it beyond that. Is there precedent for the United States booting people who have animus for us?
Yeah, there absolutely is, and it should be easier than it is. It's the issue is called ideological exclusion. In other words, you keep out people who hate America, basically, whether they're communists or Nazis or Islamists or what have you. The problem legally is that Barney Frank got an amendment passed after the end of the Cold War. This is Barney Frank, the former congressman, Democrat congressman from Massachusetts. After the end of the Cold War, when history ended, remember, that said you couldn't keep out anybody or deport anybody if they were expressing views that would be protected if it was an American citizen expressing those views. So essentially, they're applying the First Amendment to all foreigners abroad. And sorry, it doesn't work that way. It shouldn't work that way.
No.
And what we need to do is, there are things you can do even with that restriction, where people who give what's called material support to Hamas, for instance, can be deported. But material support means, you sent them money or you boxed up some AK-47s or whatever. We should be able to deport foreigners, non-citizens, especially if they're not green card holders, like foreign students, who go to some, Hamas march and say, from the river to the sea, kill all the Jews. Well, I don't care First Amendment or not. If you're an American, you get to say that. That's too bad, but you get to say it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a foreign student, sorry, you're on the next plane out of here. Unfortunately, this administration would never do that, and it would be difficult under the law currently.
Yeah, I do see some libertarian arguments that people are, they're entitled to free speech, even if it means calling for terror attacks against places like Israel or the United States.
Not if they're our guests, they shouldn't be.
Right, yeah, absolutely. And meanwhile, I was thinking, to become a United States citizen, you do have to take an oath to support and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States of America as a part of your naturalization. So why shouldn't we hold foreigners who are not citizens to a standard where we would eject them if they are rooting against us?
Good question. And you brought up the citizenship question. If you're a foreigner who became a naturalized American citizen, you're an American like anybody else. Except if you lied in your application, we can denaturalize you and strip you of your citizenship and throw you out of the country. If it can be proved that when you took the oath to defend the Constitution of the United States, you were, say, a member of Hamas or something like that, we should be able to denaturalize you. And there used to be an office, denaturalization office, that looked into those things. Under this administration, do you really think they would ever even consider that?
No, they don't even deport illegals. They're never getting to denaturalization. What comes next in this border crisis? It seems to me that we're inevitably plummeting towards some sort of chaotic event that goes beyond what we've seen just in terms of cities being overwhelmed and the rising crime rates. There's all this concern now that you have people in the United States openly expressing support for terror, for one, and so many illegals who are pouring in from all of these various countries. The threats to our homeland security seem huge, Mark Krikorian.
Yeah, you bet they are. And it's cartels, it's regular criminals, it's spies, Chinese spies, but it's also, terrorist saboteurs. I mean, we've seen this happen before. Usually what they would do, and this happened with the 9/11 terrorists and a whole series of other terrorists here, is they came in on some kind of visa.
Right.
And then, maybe overstayed or violated the terms. But the point is, somehow we let them in. It's a whole lot easier now just to come across the border and be let in. Even if you sneak across the border and don't turn yourself in, the Border Patrol is like Lucy in the Chocolate Factory. They're barely able to keep up with the minimum stuff. They're not patrolling the border in a lot of places. So, is there going to be a terrorist attack from people who snuck in? I don't know. No one knows the future, but the odds are, getting higher and higher that something like that's going to happen. And why wouldn't it?
Yeah. And finally, I spoke with Senator Roger Marshall earlier this hour, and we were discussing how, as a part of the budget that Biden is proposing, the $100 billion, nestled in there is supposedly $14 billion for our southern border. It's my impression that number is designed to actually just continue to accelerate foreign nationals into our country. Do you sense any appetite for border security in this package?
No, the White House actually says in their proposal that what they want to use the money for is to accelerate the processing of illegal immigrants into the United States.
Right.
This is, I think it was Senator Lee said something that calling that request border security is like calling gasoline a fire retardant. I mean, it's the literal opposite of what they are packaging it as. And, there's no Republican House member or senator should be voting for that package, regardless of what label the White House sticks on it.
It's just amazing. Vote for all this aid for other countries and then vote to destroy our own, all in the same package. Mark Krikorian, Executive Director for the Center for Immigration Studies. Thank you, as always, for being attuned to all these issues and sharing your wisdom with us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well, I know there's a lot of chaos in the world, but maybe a little palate cleanser would be good for you here. Hillary Clinton had a miserable day on Monday. Does that bring some joy to you? Hillary Clinton, according to the Messenger website, faced a heated protester on Monday during a visit to the Institute for Global Politics at Columbia University. She was attending the event focused on what they say is the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Clinton was speaking, and a protester in the audience interrupted her to accuse her and Joe Biden of being warmongers. Listen to this. Honestly, I was just cracking up listening to some of this.
Struck by the hypocrisy of this.
Two more people to hear from.
I'm sorry.
You have a chance. Well, I'm not sorry. Sit down.
I know you're not sorry. That's the point.
Just sit down. She's yelling at him.
The hypocrisy of this speech. The hypocrisy of the fact that what do you have? Can you please make a statement about President Joe Biden's speech? This is a clearly warmongering speech. President Joe Biden is calling for $100 billion of funding for Israel, Taiwan, and Ukraine, and we're supposed to just bundle these together and pretend like we're going to rush to World War III, and we're all just going to let Hillary Rodham Clinton sit here.
Good question.
Hey,
I'm sorry. This is not the way to have a conversation.
I'm sorry.
If you want to have a conversation, you're welcome to come talk to me afterwards.
You can sit here. Okay, right. You're gonna wait for me, right? Please. I do not believe.
I'm gonna wait for you after the speech, says Hillary. That's never good.
Listen to you, and I will respond to you.
I do not believe you. Respectfully, I do not.
Be careful with the response you get from Hillary.
Believe you. And the fact of the matter is that the American people's voice are what need to be heard.
Yeah,
because our president is not speaking for the American people, and neither are you.
That's your opinion. That's your opinion.
Yes, that's my opinion.
Well, then sit down. We've heard your opinion.
Sit down.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to.
I'm not going to sit down. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop working.
Is there security at this event? What is even happening?
Human rights.
I'm going to exercise my free speech until
it's not free speech when you are disrupting everybody else's opportunity.
It is free speech. This is free speech, everyone. This is free speech. That is not free speech.
She doesn't even understand what free speech is.
Constructing narratives that are openly hypocritical. I'm sorry. The incredible hypocrisy. You tell me John Foster Dulles went with Eleanor Roosevelt to bring this Declaration of the Rights of Man. John Foster Dulles was involved.
He's starting to cry now. Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. Anyway, the good thing is she's not president of the United States. She never was president of the United States, and she never will be president of the United States. Coming up next, the great one, Mark Levin, right here on WMAL.